is? He's
Yeah.
the CEO of JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, he comes out and he's part of this international or national think tank of the economy experts, and they're now saying that companies should put their employees' interests and goals before the shareholders' return. And I'm like, why do I fucking smell a communism 2.0 version instituted by the corporations? Oh, now it's not about returning the investment. There's always an agenda when these people open their fucking mouths, And I think what they're trying to do is the same shit they did with Bitcoin. First, they ignored it because people have been talking about putting people first before profits, for, I don't know, last 10, 15 years maybe, since we could get on the internet and talk, right? And now all of a sudden it's their idea, and so LinkedIn is kind of like shaping the narrative as, oh my gosh, now the big people and the influentials and the people in power who we should all listen to are talking about it. How awesome is that?
That's good stuff, Igor. I'm recording now, so you'll know.
Oh, okay.
But it reminds me, I remember in the early days as well, there was Yahoo had all these chat rooms. Did you ever use those?
I did on occasion. Yeah.
I mean,
was like,
that was the free market. It was unbelievable because people could create whatever kind of rooms they wanted. They could create their own rooms. And I remember, especially during the Iraq War, it was going on, and I mean, there was some ferocious, heated debates going on, but people just did it. People were creating all it, and then one day, it just disappeared. And I remember being suspicious of that. I thought, that's just too much of a good thing. Do you know what I mean? It was too much of a good thing. People had too much control over their own whatever. The fact that they could create their own rooms of whatever topic of interest for free. You know what I mean? And then it vanished, and I thought that was suspicious.
And they know that, and it was almost, looking back on it, and I don't doubt, I'm a skeptic about everything. I think it was an experiment. It was an experiment. They wanted to see how far it would go, and what people truly and really thought about their techniques and tactics and propaganda and stuff. And so they're like, okay, we've had enough. Let's pull the plug on this. Kind of like the World Trade Center Building 7. They're waiting for it. Oh shit, well, the smoke is gone, everything's cleared. Pull the fucking building. Pull it. Can't wait for the fire to melt steel on this one.
Yeah, those famous words, pull it, Silverstein, pull it. Okay. That should have been a question that I asked Richard Gage the other day. If anyone, or James Corbett, I should have asked them, has anyone ever asked Silverstein directly what he meant when he said pull it? I don't know. I don't know if anyone's ever actually asked him about that or not.
You probably have an excuse like, we were watching the whole thing on TV, and I told him, I was telling my associate to pull my fingers like a fart. Some bullshit excuse like that, and people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course. Yeah, he was just playing a joke. Yeah, like he didn't tell him to pull the building or implode the building. It was just a fart joke.
Good, Igor. So Igor Krezo, you're a season 1 graduate. What are your thoughts on? Well, let's go to the back. Let's back up. How did you first find autonomy? What's your story? When did you come to the States from Croatia? How did you take the metaphorical red pill, and how did you eventually make your way to Autonomy Season 1?
You're taking me way back, dude. You have time for this? I'll make it short. I emigrated from Croatia to Canada in '97 as a 16-year-old. It was like post-war Croatia, post-Balkan War. Did the whole spiel of, growing up or trying to grow up or whatever you call it, go to school, did the public school thing. And high school, and then went to college and didn't quite see the point of college because partly and mostly because, I was raised by a single mother. So I was kind of had to step into the provider role. And I guess I didn't really have patience for college and their bullshit. And I guess the epiphany was one day in chemistry, the professor was really honest with us. And I remember taking the chemistry class in the first year of college, and the dude said, well, you know what theories and theories are, and basically it's just an idea, a really good idea that everybody agrees with until a better idea comes along, and then we teach you that different idea. so I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. So I'm paying you whatever X amount of dollars per semester to teach me about, some bullshit that ultimately could change, will change, and what I'm paying you for now is going to become obsolete, right? And so I was taking student loans, so I was actually paying for it, getting in debt for it. In about a year of it, I realized that it just, that I wasn't the type of guy to continue on with it. And, I just needed to really go grow up and go get a job. And I did that. And then.
Was this still in Canada?
Yeah, this was in Canada, yeah.
What part?
Windsor, Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
And then, got a job in a car factory, what most people do from over there. Did a couple of odd jobs, then came to Las Vegas, visited my cousin, met a girl during that first visit. Then a couple, half month later, I came back to visit the girl, and then I decided to stay and give it a go with the girl in Las Vegas because, why not? I was 21, and I was like, why not? And then 15 years later, that girl's my wife, and we have 4 children. So in those 15 years, though, you go from being, a kid to becoming a parent. You don't know what you're doing. You know what the hell's going on. I always had a skeptical streak in me, though. So about 2010, I met one of my really good friends now. He was the Tragedy and Hope community member, and he was a co-producer on or the associate producer, something like that. He donated toward the John Taylor Gatto production.
What was his name?
Robert Candelaria.
Yeah, I don't think I know him. Yeah.
Yeah, so so him and I kind of got to talking about the important things in life, like philosophy and what's going on and what wasn't I told growing up. And, I was on a relatively, pretty zealous Catholic streak to where I was converting people, and I felt responsible for his soul and wanted to convert him back to the Catholic faith. And one thing led to another, and he dropped a couple of words I've never heard before. He talked about the esoteric meaning of the Bible and exoteric, and I was like, what the hell does that mean? And looked it up, and he kind of introduced a few concepts to me. I was 30. This was in 2012. And from that point on, dude, it was one of those, my paradigm was shattered. My whole worldview was completely, challenged and broken, and it dissipated right in front of my eyes. And I had to reconstitute myself, in the light direction, I guess. And that's kind of when I was introduced to Richard's work, Jan Irvin's work, James Corbett's work, Mark Passio's work. And during the, initial stages of that, when when your whole paradigm is kind of shattered, you got to rebuild it. And I drew, strength and information and building blocks from Richard's experience and Mark Passio's experience. And Jan was an influence when it came to the trivium. And then my buddy, Robert, he was also a reliable sage in my journey. So,
Igor, you jumped straight from being a normal guy to Tragedy and Hope and the Corbett Report. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I kind
You
of.
were very lucky. Yeah, because I had a slower transition. I took the Alex Jones, InfoWars, and Mike Adams Natural News.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. That I followed them for years before I finally ended up, at Peace Revolution, Tragedy and Hope, and the Corbett Report. Because as far as I'm concerned, that's where it stops. It took me a long time to realize, okay, they're great. InfoWars, sometimes they nail it, but they don't. Not always. Sometimes you need to apply a bit of critical thinking. Same with Natural News, does great work there, but there's something missing there. There's something. And then I found my answers. So you were very lucky. You jumped directly to the cream of the crop, right where.
It was through my buddy's influence. He kind of, he was joking about it, but it wasn't pretty, dude. I mean, it wasn't pretty. Like the paradigm shattering, because you go from I went from being staunchly Catholic and a papist, if you will. I was an apologist for the Pope. I would use, my cunning linguistical ability, language skills to just, convince people into, the Catholic way and whatnot. And because but I always cared about the truth. I really did. I thought that was the truth because that's kind of how it's sold to you from the pulpit. The religion is the truth, the only truth. And so in my pursuit of truth and my convictions and me wanting to convert my buddy back to Catholicism, my eyes were open, and I remember sitting there, with watching a couple of documentaries that made some sense and listening to some podcasts and interviews and looking at a couple of books that I was like, well, this stuff has existed time immemorial, this whole Trinity and virgin birth and the Holy Trinity, the God, triune God. And I was like, wow, so this isn't new. Like Catholics this is not organically authentic, discovery. And so that kind of that didn't feel good. Like I was shocked. I was on the verge of but luckily my buddy cared enough to check in with me. Hey, are you doing all right? I was like, yeah, dude. He's like, well, it wasn't easy. I feel like I just brought you over to the edge of the cliff and just freaking pushed you. And that was it. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of how it felt like. But like I said, having been exposed to Richard's work, James Corbett's work, and Mark Passio's work, and a bunch of others, but those were my three main sources. And then every time they would say something and they would challenge you, go check this out for yourself, go verify, I would go off and verify the information. And that helped me reconstitute, my a new belief system, if you will, a new mode of operating, and where I believe in truth and I serve truth in a sense, and that's ultimately all I care about. And that's kind of how I'm here. So then fast forward to, I don't know, what was it, September last year, 2018 or October, Richard sends out an e-blast. Hey guys, I'm doing a beta course in autonomy, super special, offer pricing, and I was kind of like, I saw the email come and go through my inbox for like a month or two. And then when he said last call, I was like, you know what? This guy has produced content that has really made a difference in my life, and the least I can do is help support his project. I didn't go to autonomy to find autonomy, because I think I was well on my way since 2012 on the path to autonomy, because that was kind of my end goal, and so that's kind of how I got into it. I subscribed and I filled out and I joined the class, and little did I know what to expect and how awesome it's going to turn out. So told you it was a long story. I try to keep it short.
No, I'm surprised. I didn't know. Some people are shocked into taking the red pill, some kind of traumatic event for example, I know a couple who they were quite normal. They thought the world was the way it appears on TV. And then they had a little incident with the police and they were shocked. They realized, hold on, the police, they're not our friends. And then they had to go through the whole court proceedings, trying to get justice for getting beaten up by the police and all that. And, and they just flew down the rabbit hole from there on. One thread led to another. And in your case, yeah, it was interesting. I didn't know the religious approach to it.
I was super religious. I mean, I went to church 5 out of 7 days a week. Yeah, I was hyper religious. And I think, in my pursuit of truth, I genuinely believe that the Catholic version of Jesus Christ is the truth. So I pursued that deep and intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. And like I said, again, little did I know that it would lead me, I loved God so much that I was like, it's not enough for me to believe. I want to know God and I want to help other people know God. And here I am now. People ask me, do you believe in God? And I said, no, I don't. I said, you can't believe what you know. Once you know God exists, and this can be another conversation, but once you know something exists, there's no point in believing it. I consider faith, if I can use an analogy of a stick shift car, right? First gear is faith, because you can't get anywhere without going through the first gear. You put it in first and you get the car rolling. But then once you're in second, third, and fourth, you don't need to be in first gear. You know what I'm trying to say? So faith is like our first gear, and faith is necessary to move you to act or to pursue something. So for example, I've never been to your house. I've never laid my eyes on it. I've met you, so I know you exist based on my 5, 6 senses, if you will, 5 senses. And then, but you've told me that you have a house in the country, in Texas somewhere. So I believe you. So that faith moves me to someday visit you in your house, right? But once I meet you and visit you in your house, I don't believe that you have a house anymore. I know that you have a house.
Exactly.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Because in theory, it could be a joke. I could give you my address in Texas and send you the middle of nowhere while I am in Florida somewhere and say, ha, joke's on you.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly. So
it's possible.
Yeah, and that's where belief or faith plays an important role in moving us toward action, toward pursuit. If you believe in God truly, then you're gonna want to know God. And once you get to know God and the mystery of God and the truth of God, then you don't really need to believe anymore. I think I came to that realization, and then I read a book about Carl Jung, and he apparently says the same thing. He says, I don't believe in God. I know God exists.
What about objectivism?
Oh, I'm familiar with it. Ayn Rand's objectivism. I think it's probably the closest thing to what I would subscribe to in a sprinkled with Western Christian tradition, as in the tradition of based on the trivium and reason and not the hyper religious type. But the reason we have what we have here today is largely due to the Western Christian belief system.
Yeah.
The belief in law, rule of law instead of the mob rule. The belief that each individual matters, regardless of their adherences, the belief that you have individual the idea to conceive an idea of individual freedoms and liberty and rights stemmed from the Western Christian tradition. The guy dubbed St. Thomas Aquinas, he had a treaty on it. And St. Thomas More was a legal scholar, and those were all quote unquote Catholic saints, but they were scholars above all. And I don't think people understand that enough. They use the saint card and they trump that saint card, but I don't think they understand that they were scholars who happened to leverage the influence of the Catholic Church, because Catholic Church had a monopoly on knowledge at that time, so.
What about how has your family reacted to the changes that you've been through in the last few years?
Oh, dude. Yeah, when I said it wasn't pretty, about a year into, the whole awakening, about a year into it, my wife and I were talking divorce. We were sitting at Olive Garden at dinner across the table. And I remember telling her, I said, I know that if you knew what I know, you would even be more liberated, more empowered by it, just by the person you are. But I can't explain to you yet what I've come to know. I can only show you the path I've taken and invite you to take that same path. And yeah, so like I said, about a year into it, in 2013, the D word was very much alive and a prospect because of her still being within the church and me kind of like being over the whole religiosity of things.
Yeah.
And about another 6 months after that, she was on a bandwagon with me. So she was just blazing her own trail, though. Like I said, she was already took her 6 months to catch up with my year and a half, and then she was off on her own race. She's like I'm like a hare, and no, she's a hare, and I'm a turtle.
Well, I mean, you got into a very good profession. I mean, real estate is the kind of skill that anywhere you go, you could kind of pick it up and work and make money doing that. Am I right? Working in real estate?
Yeah, it's I mean, the livelihood is definitely the potential to earn a higher income than most employed people is definitely there. It has its challenges, but yeah, I mean, anywhere you go that has a similar system of real estate sales and ownership, you can definitely leverage it and make an income.
I've actually taken the real estate exam a few times, so I kind of understand what it takes to become a licensed real estate agent. I wasn't actually trying to pass the exam. It was another.
Hey, but I don't know if you can hear me, but your video and your voice is shutting off.
Whoa. How's that? Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, say it again.
No, I'm saying I can respect how hard it was to pass that real estate exam because I've taken it myself.
Yeah, it depends state to state too. But it's funny. I guess one of my strengths in general is the ability to take tests. I can memorize anything and ace any test. I keep joking to people, if there's a test for rocket building, I will definitely memorize everything there is, and I will ace a rocket building test. I will ace a brain surgery test, but I'll never build a rocket and I'll never do brain surgery. So I had a job before in my previous lifetime, and I was a facilities manager. And my strengths was to any test that needed to be taken for a company to have a license qualifier, whatever it is, electrical, manufactured homes, gas, whatever. They sent me to take all these tests, and I took the test, but I never did any work. They had people doing the work who couldn't pass the test. It was funny, It's like there's like a place and a string for everybody. So they liked the fact that I could get a license so they could do the work.
Oh, that's great. How did autonomy help you out then? Coming through autonomy, getting through the things that you've learned, has it helped you out much? Has it made much of a difference?
Well, like I said, going into it, I had no idea what to expect. I kind of expected maybe a little bit of a distillation of his Peace Revolution podcast, like distilled into more digestible bite sizes, from hundreds and hundreds of hours of podcasts. But I had no idea how developed he had it, and I had no idea the level of interaction with like in the teammates and the relationships that are gonna come out of it, and so I was pleasantly surprised. I think as pretty much all of us were. I think everybody got more than what they kind of thought they would get. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I definitely got more than I thought I would get. It was, it surpassed my expectations for sure.
Your your connection is again.
How about now? Is it cleared up?
So I can hear you, but I can't see the video.
Oh, don't worry about that, because
Okay.
It's recording on my end. I can see you clearly, so that's mainly what matters. The audio is more important cool. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, and then oftentimes your audio will just start getting garbled, so I can't hear you. So I'll just ask you to repeat yourself.
No, that's the people partying in Las Vegas outside your door, man.
It ain't that kind of neighborhood. I'm way out of the strip. You don't even know if this part of Vegas exists.
Igor, what about the future then? Is there anything that you've taken from Autonomy that are you applying now, or you plan to apply to help you out? What do you got going on?
I think one of the biggest things for me, and I keep saying this, and I know it might sound like a broken record, but and like a non-thing to many people, but that mindset of abundance and not being in a mindset of fear and scarcity, I think that was the most important takeaway personally, because of my upbringing and the culture I was in, and you coming out, everything was scarce. I mean, everything was scarce. There was no abundance. Was a luxury. It wasn't a mindset. You just associated that with another lifetime. Like abundance was a luxury for another lifetime. And as a refugee in a Balkan war, you're a kid and you kind of like have different. You have no idea what's going on, but that scarcity always hung over the head, right? Because you're uprooted, you're displaced, you're in a foreign country. We went to Germany, went to Italy, then we came back to Croatia, and we didn't live where I used to live at. So then, because that was still under occupation. So then, anyway, so that's so it was kind of ingrained in me, that whole hoard, save. There's never going to be enough. There's never enough, and for some reason, I think Richard kind of had like across a few of the initial episodes, that was the running theme that resonated with me. And it completely unlocked a mindset in me that I didn't know I was capable of. So that was the main thing. And then second thing is inventory, like skills, like what do you think you have that you can, package and provide value to people with. And then how can you, if you don't have anything that you like or you want to have, how can you develop it? How can you identify what you don't have, and how can you develop it to the point where you can turn it into an asset? You know what I mean? And you're a prime example. Like I'm super proud of what you've done, and you become like the natural interview personality. You're like the Joe Rogan of the autonomy class.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be a right description, but yeah,
I'm telling
I like talking to people. Yeah, I like talking to people, and the autonomy platform has given me a platform to shine the light on everybody. Do you know what I mean?
You needed some plugs. You need yourself a bottle of whiskey.
Say that again, Igor.
Yeah, no, I think you're doing great, but you need some props. You need like a bottle of whiskey. You need some, you need like a little You need a joint in your hand. You need to start talking about the different benefits.
Yeah, I'm looking around here what I could use for a prop.
Pick up a book, do a plug like Richard does. What is one of these books that he reads about First World War?
Here, how's this for a prop? Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley. Yeah.
There you go. And not Did you read the book? Did you actually read the book cover to cover?
No, I know. I've read 101, Joe Plummer's book, and I've only read the highlighted parts of the actual book itself, but I can't claim I have not read the whole thing.
To be honest with you, I bought the same book. It's sitting on my bookshelf. I sat down to read it numerous times. I think I haven't made it past page 13. I'd rather listen to a podcast or an audio version of it,
Well, John Loth has an audio version of it out there. It's on YouTube. So I believe he's finished it. I believe as far as I know, he's read the whole thing. And it's free. It's out there on YouTube. Yeah, John, you know who I'm talking about. He's a Tragedy and Hope member as well. John Lothe. And he read he does that. He records he does his own audio recordings of a lot of relevant books. And he puts it out there for you. Igor, how many languages do you speak?
I can't. Okay, so I'm in English and Croatian. I dabble a little bit in Italian. If I look at it as if I went to Italy, would I starve and would I sleep on the street? No, I wouldn't. That's conversational enough for me. So I'm conversational in Italian. I'm conversational in Spanish. I dabbled a little bit in German, so I can say maybe just like, a couple of things in German. So I could probably, if I didn't know sign language, I'd probably sleep on the street and starve in Germany if they didn't speak English.
Yeah. Have you been to Spain? I think I've asked you, but I can't remember.
I have never been to Spain, no.
Okay. That's a famous song by Three Dog Night. Do you know it?
The audio's not coming through.
Never Been to Spain is a famous song by Three Dog Night. I'll send it to you later on. Yeah,
shoot me a link. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Never been to Spain. Should be my anthem.
Yeah, cool, Igor. Well, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to bring you, past through the future. Are there any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh, dude, I mean, just for anybody watching this in the future, I think autonomy is a lot more than a course. I think it's a platform to develop some truly minded and freedom loving and truth serving think tanks. I think we ought to leverage that and really work on projects first, starting with our own, and then regional, where we actually get to build things in addition to websites. We actually get to have, like real action in the world take place to where, there's a legacy and we make an impact on how things are done and what's being done. I think we're close. We're on the verge of it. And it always starts with individual, always starts within us. We have to implement that. And then the more we're used to doing something, the easier it is to connect with people, starting in the autonomy season 1 and season 2, and then moving it forward. You know what I mean?
Excellent. Yeah, well said.
It's a lot more than just a course. It's more of like, it's an idea whose time has come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great. Well said. I'll leave it at that. Good job, Igor. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for talking to me.